The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. One does not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was hungry. The tempter approached him and said, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." He said in reply, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city, Jerusalem, and made him stand on the parapet of the temple and said to him, "If you're the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will rescue you and support you, lest you dash your foot on a stone." Jesus replied, "Again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Then the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their magnificence. And he said to him, "All these kingdoms I shall give you if you prostrate yourself and worship me." At this, Jesus replied, "Get away, Satan. It is written, the Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve." Then the devil left Jesus, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. The Gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Praise you. This is indeed a little different, but coming over from the hotel underground passage, then arriving here, it was very much like the early Christians had to worship in silence and secrecy, like the holy place we saw the other day across from the church, the house church. In Greek, in Latin, we used to call them, I wasn't there, they used to be called domus ecclesia, house churches, and they were the first churches Christians worshipped in. They were people's houses, just like that one across the street. They were opened up to the public secretly, and they became church houses, and eventually they even included baptistries in them. They go back to the ancient times in Rome and, of course, in the Holy Land. So that reminded me of this, the early Christians gathering. Here we are in a formerly Lutheran church that is very beautiful, great organ behind us that nobody's going to play, but it goes back to our roots. And as I said before, as we look up in the dome of the ceiling, I'm sure that all of it's written in Dutch, but the two words I can clearly make out are Jesus Christus. So he's watching over us as we gather in his name. The theme of today is temptation, both with the first reading of Genesis and, of course, Matthew's Gospel. But I have to touch on the reading from St. Paul. It's so theologically, how can I say, correct. Through one man, we don't know who that man was, we call him Adam, man, sin came into the world. And the sin through Adam and Eva, his sidekick, was that he or she, the original people, thought that they could get away with something. Okay? God put us in this wonderful paradise. He said, you can have anything you want, animals, birds, everything is yours, but don't touch that particular fruit. In Italian, we call that mela stregata, the bewitched fruit, from the story of Biancaneve, Snow White. So the bewitched fruit. Now, we're not talking about apples, pears, bananas, anything like that. We're talking about what was that thing that so attracted mankind away from God that he or she thought that he could run his own life without God, without a foundation, without faith, without contact with the supernatural. Last week it was in my office actually, it wasn't a mass. I have a family of clients who are going through changes, and they asked me they know I'm also a priest, they asked me if I would pray for their sister-in-law who was ill. And they said the sad part of her illness is that she's an atheist. These people were Irish, very Irish, and their sister-in-law is in Ireland, where we are now in Europe. And And I said, I'll pray for her health. And she says, really pray for her faith. She doesn't have any. And the woman stopped and said, I don't know how anybody could live without faith. I don't know how anybody could go through life without having faith, she's Catholic, in Jesus Christ. Or faith in God as you understand God to be. And I said, that's remarkable. I mean, it's simple, but it's remarkable. Paul addresses that in the beginning, people, we'll call them people rather than man or Eve, people chose the law, and they thought the law was going to get them to heaven. The law was the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. The law was keeping all 735 rules of the Torah. That was the law. It didn't work. It wasn't fully respected 100%. That's why generation after generation from our ancestors, the Israelites, the law fell. The prophets came and preached people back to the law, but they rejected them over and over and over. And finally, one man comes, Paul makes this very clear, comes and brings in the new law. And he is the law, Jesus Christ. He is the law. He's the new law. And through people, creation, men and women, early, our transgressions enter the world. Through Jesus Christ, we're forgiven our transgressions. And that's why we're here. We're here in the season of Lent, remembering we're Christians who believe in Jesus Christ as the one who can forgive anything, but we've got to go to him. We've got to place ourselves before him. How do we know that? Matthew records a very human Jesus. The iconic symbol of Matthew is often the young man with a wing. Based on the four evangelists, he's the young man. Mark, as you know, is the lion. And John is the eagle who soars. And Mark is the lion. And Matthew, Mark, and who did I miss out? Luke. And Luke is the historian who is also the ox, because his stories start with Jesus in the Bethlehem, in the stable. So we look at Matthew, who depicts the history and the genealogy of Jesus in his gospel. And throughout the gospel, he focuses on Jesus the man. Miracle worker, of course, Son of God, of course, but his perspective is miracle upon miracle that Jesus the man performs. He's God also, so he has that little extra zap going for him. And he begins his ministry right here with all of us. He begins his ministry being tempted. I mean, that's how his ministry begins. He's filled with the Spirit, and so are we, by the way. We've all received the same Spirit. He brings the Holy Spirit to us. We've all been baptized in the Spirit. And he goes into the desert. Scripture says, led by the Spirit, like a word of example, you might say. And there he's tempted by Satan. Well, I think Satan's real, but let's look at the whole concept of evil. He's tempted to give up on God again. You're hungry? You can get something to eat. Take advantage of what's around you. He's saying the rocks, but take advantage of what's around you. You're powerless? I'll bring you on the temple. Throw yourself down, and I'll give you power. The devil's going to give Jesus power. Any other temptations you want to be powerful? Don't worry about it. I'll make you powerful. Do this, jump off the temple, jump off the mountain, and prostrate yourself before me. In other words, adore evil, get on your knees before Satan, and you will be in charge. How many pieces of literature have been written about that? Man selling his soul from medieval literature to today. And it still goes on. How many years ago it came out, the movie was something on Wall Street, The Lion of Wall Street, or The Fox of Wall Street, The Wolf of Wall Street, better yet. Same thing. So that was only a few years ago. The idea is still there in front of us. Give me your soul, and you'll get everything that you can see. This is the devil. And Jesus says, don't tempt the Lord your God. Don't use words to get back at God. God created the Word, and the Word here is both the written Word and the Word Jesus, the Word made flesh. God gave us his Word so that we could be in unity with him, be in contact with him. So that as we live our lives, and we as pilgrims, or travelers anyway, we come to another country, we come to a land that's known for its ancient faith that's not really renewed, and our guide has filled us in on that, where the Catholics were here, they weren't there, then the Lutherans came, the Calvinists came, and now pretty much, where is God? I don't know. All of us have to answer that question for ourselves. But we come here with faith and doing this little thing, bringing peace, bringing faith and prayers to this nation, people of the Netherlands, because they are our brothers and sisters. Nothing about what their role is in the scriptures, but we're another people. God sent Jesus to remind all of us that you're all brothers and sisters. So what you want for yourself, you should want for other people. You're hungry? Well, guess what? The poor are hungry as well. You have a distraction on the evil apple or the evil prize? Well, guess what? It's going to make you rich temporarily, but guess what? Other people need food and clothing and warmth. And Jesus combines all of that in himself. This new man doesn't give us power. This new man, Jesus Christ, gives us love. This new man gives us a way of enjoying the fullness of our lives as human beings. Loving, sharing, goodness, charity. We're here today because during the season of Lent, we have an opportunity to remember that we probably haven't done it as well as we could have in this whole last year. We haven't been as charitable, as forgiving. We may have been more prejudiced than we should be, prejudiced at all. We may have sinned more than we should have sinned or could have sinned. So this is a time of reflection, these 40 days. And I like what the Pope said. He says, you know how people give up things for Lent? He says, I'd like all Catholics to give up being judgmental toward each other and sarcastic. That's not bad. That's very good. And with that in mind, yesterday somebody commented on my Facebook page, because I put some of the pictures of our food, I guess you're not giving up desserts for Lent. Thank you. I was going to come back at that. And I said, no, bite your tongue, Skirty. But you see how judgmental we are? And that was a Catholic, a very Catholic person. And yet you see how judgmental we are? And we're the Christians. So we know we have a lot to do to improve our place in the world and the place of our sisters and brothers who have far less than us in the world. So through prayer, almsgiving, giving to the poor, and abstinence when we're back home, to really observe the 3 pillars of Lent, as Jesus reminds us. Pray, sacrifice for the poor, and really know who you are by placing ourselves in the presence of God each day.